What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have a crazy jam-packed show for you all, as we have lots of news and matches to recap, such as USC, the University of Southern California, getting it done in men's volleyball, taking down number 11 UC Santa Barbara not once, but twice. How did those Trojans pull off the win on the road against the Gauchos? And how about Stanford men's volleyball? 3-0 as they just recently took down number 12 UC Irvine in 5 sets at Maples Pavilion. Are the Cardinal for real? And Penn State women's volleyball has hired their new head coach, the third head coach in program history. Who is this coach? And will this coach make a big impact? So hand me a volleyball, set up the net, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon. I appreciate you all tuning in. It is much appreciated. And without any further delay, let's get on into this volleyball action. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsors. The first sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Southern California Warriors Semi-Pro Football Team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of different outcomes, whether it's playing to get film for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and on Facebook by typing the words Southern California and then Warriors. The second sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Fremen take care of that for you. Kit has founded and managed Background Check International Businesses since 1994 and is here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. This business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or other illegal activity. They do not have my favorite apps or social media sites, Twitter and Instagram, but they do have the Book of Faces, aka Facebook, as you can find them on Facebook by typing the word background, then check, then international, then dash BCI. And they also have their website, www.bcint.com. And IE Sports Radio is available on social media, as you can follow them on Twitter and Instagram at IE Sports Radio. And you can also follow them on Facebook by typing the word IE Sports and then Radio. You also have their website, www.iesportsradio.com. And when you go to said website, you will see a Patreon link there, which has 5 different tiers, which starts out at $5 a month. This donation gets you a shout out from all 32 of our shows. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise, access to IE Sports Radio U, the podcasting university of IE Sports Radio, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of IE Sports Radio's flagship show, The Defining Moment, with Larry B. Because for the past 7.5 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, legendary coaches, authorized media personnel, to having tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, IE Sports Radio has been continued to be by the fans, for the fans. And with your help, IE Sports Radio is ready to take the next biggest step. And thank you, everybody, for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. The fan of the month for IE Sports Radio is Chris from Massachusetts, a Bills fan, a diehard Bills fan, as the Buffalo Bills are indeed gearing up for a possible deep playoff run. And then our IE Sports Radio Patreon supporters are Bay Area Raised Apparel and Marcus Losgreat. So thank you to those supporters, and congratulations to our fan of the month. Now let's get on into the volleyball action. As we say hello to Gina G in the chat room, she says, have an amazing show. And Adam says, Teran, happy Monday. Happy Monday to you too, Adam. And she says, Stanford Cardinal, or Stanford for the win, go Cardinal. Yes, I'll be talking about Stanford's men's volleyball team in a little bit. But first, we have some women's volleyball transfer news we have to go over. I almost, hence the word almost, kind of forgot about the women's volleyball transfer news before I went on. And I'm like, I need to find out the most recent transfers. And the transfer portal has been popping, y'all. It's been popping like popcorn. And we've actually got some noteworthy transfers. Starting off with Jenna Hampton, the libero, as she transfers from Penn State to South Carolina. That's a big get for the Gamecocks, considering South Carolina had a solid year. They were the only SEC team to knock off Kentucky, and this is a big addition because I feel maybe South Carolina kind of needs that leader to guide them in the correct direction. I think the Gamecocks are a legit program. They actually had a solid start to their season, then they kind of fell off, and then SEC play kind of came, and they didn't really have that big standout-ish win. And then they beat Kentucky, they finished 500, and they got into the big dance, only to be bounced in the first round. But South Carolina, with the addition of Jenna Hampton, has some potential next season. Staying in the SEC and staying in terms of Penn State transfers, we have Annie Kate Fitzpatrick as she transfers from Penn State to Florida. She is an outside hitter. So with the uncertainty of Thayer Hall coming back for the Gators, as she is a senior and we don't know if she's going to be taking that fifth year of eligibility, we don't know if she'll be back. And with Annie Kate Fitzpatrick coming in for the Gators, this actually adds a great addition to the Gators offense. Obviously Penn State had the changing of the guard most recently, but for the Gators, this is definitely helpful for them just because you'll see why in terms of the SEC. The SEC is going to go through a little bit of a major makeover in terms of some of its rosters. So Annie Kate Fitzpatrick going to the Gators is big-time news right there, and I think this definitely helps out Florida in terms of offense. Jumping over to the Big Ten, we have Elise McGee, as she is a setter who transfers from Kansas to Minnesota. So Minnesota picks up a big transfer here. I don't know if she'll be able to be in the starting rotation just because I want to say Minnesota returns their starting setter, but if she does get into Hugh McCutcheon's offense, then honestly she can make a big impact. So I think this is kind of a big get. We'll have to see how it pans out for the Golden Gophers. So there is that little transfer news right there. So next up in terms of transfers, we have Abby Simpson, who transfers from Arkansas Tech to West Florida. So that's kind of a big get right there for West Florida. Good little helpfulness on the outside hitter position. And yes, Hugh McCutcheon is the head coach of Minnesota. I'm getting him mixed up with Dave Shondell, but Dave coaches Purdue while McCutcheon coaches Minnesota. So there's that. Then we have Taya Hafner, who transfers from Evansville to Purdue of Fort Wayne as she is a setter. So nice little get for Purdue of Fort Wayne. I can't really pronounce their mascot correctly, and I don't know if they have a different terminology for their mascots in terms of female. I think it's the Metastadors or something. But either way, Taya Hafner transfers to Purdue at Fort Wayne. Next up, we have Shea Eggleston, who transfers from Alabama to Cincinnati. So remember when Alabama defeated Cincinnati in college football? Well, Cincinnati got the last laugh as Eggleston transfers from Alabama to Cincinnati. So I know that's not really that funny, but I feel Eggleston is the sister of Logan Eggleston. Like, I don't know that for a fact, but I am 95% certain Shea Eggleston is the sister of Logan Eggleston. I'd have to double check that on the break, but we shall see. Then another big transfer, as speaking of Texas, we have Skylar Fields transferring from Texas to USC, Southern California. That is huge right there, just because USC needs that power outside hitter. They need that Sammy Bricio or Kalia Lanier type of player. And I think Skylar Fields transferring from Texas to USC really helps USC out, considering USC just didn't have that big hitter. They did have Brooke Botkin back, but she wasn't really her true Brooke Botkin self. Like, she couldn't really carry the team. So this comes at a big time for USC. And I think Fields will make a big impact for the Trojans. Next up, we have Trinity Burge, as she is a setter who transfers from Radford as she transfers to Towson. So, good get for Towson. Always good to have a setter or two in your arsenal. Maybe run a 6-2 offense. Then we have Megan Dombrowski, who is an opposite/middle blocker. She transfers from West Virginia as she will go to the Sun Belt Conference in Appalachian State. So, good get for App State, as that helps boost their middle blocker position and their right side. So it's a good get. Then we have Lauren Strain, who is a middle blocker. She transfers from Northern Colorado to Wake Forest. So Wake Forest knows how tough and competitive the ACC can get. And this year was no exception, as getting this player will definitely help them out. Like, they'll definitely at least try to keep pace with some of the other teams in the ACC, but we'll have to see if Wake Forest can add more reinforcements. Staying in the ACC, we have Ellie Glock, who transfers from USC to Louisville. So that is actually the second USC transfer that Louisville has plucked. The first USC setter who transferred from there was... Oh, God, I'm actually blanking. How am I blanking on this girl's name? I'm going to kick myself for forgetting her name. It'll come to me. That name will come to me, but that is the second setter from USC that Louisville has kind of plucked. So it's some good stuff right there, and I think Louisville's got something going. The only problem is that, yes, that is a great addition, but how will USC determine, or not USC, Louisville determine who gets the starting position? And Raquel Lazaro, that is her name. I kind of was blanking on her name, but Raquel Lazaro was the first setter that transferred from USC. So, once again, big get for Louisville, as that fills the void for Tori Dilfer, but we'll see who wins the starting position between Glock and Lazaro. Maybe the two players get run in a 6-2 offense. So we'll see how Louisville addresses that, as we say hello to Davidson Crooks in the chat room. He says, "What's good?" Hey, good to hear and good to see you in the chat room, Davidson. Just going over some college women's volleyball transfer news. I know you're watching your Alabama Crimson Tide football team try to repeat as college football champions, so I appreciate you popping in. Staying in the ACC, we have Madison Williams, who transfers from Texas to NC State. So I talked about NC State last week, and they actually have a good foundation of players transferring. Like, they are getting a lot of transfers. Like, NC State knows how competitive the ACC is, just like Wake Forest, and they want to be a part of that echelon, which is basically like in like the top 5, because obviously the ACC is a Power 5 conference, and they want to be in the mix like Miami was this year. Now, Madison Williams obviously wasn't in the mix when it came to Texas's offense last year, but I think with her having a new change of scenery, I think Madison Williams will be able to adapt well to NC State. Jumping over to the West Coast Conference, we have Phoebe Awaliye, who transfers from Georgia to Loyola Marymount. So she goes from the SEC over to the West Coast Conference, which is pretty solid. Awaliye is a middle blocker, and I forgot to mention that Madison Williams is an outside hitter. So back to Awaliye. So that's kind of a good get for LMU. LMU had a solid season, but they just did not have that big standout victory that made the committee say, let's put LMU into the NCAA tournament. So Awaliye, I think, can help the Lions achieve some greatness. Then we jump over to the Big West Conference. We have Talia Edmonds, who transfers from Michigan State to Hawaii, as she is a libero. So that's a good get for Hawaii. Hawaii's always that juggernaut team in the Big West Conference who always finds like these gem players and turns them into like noteworthy diamonds and whatnot. So I think this is kind of a good get, and Edmonds, I want to say she had herself a solid year at Michigan State last year, but Michigan State just wasn't that great of a team. They did have that one win against Purdue, but unfortunately Michigan State kind of had the buck stop right there. Speaking of Michigan, we have Allison Jacobs, an outside hitter who transfers from UCLA to Michigan. So that's also a huge get for Michigan, because Michigan did make the NCAA tournament, but they just could not pull out that victory against Ball State. But with this player, I think this Allison Jacobs can make a big impact for the Wolverines. Allison Jacobs had a solid year with the Bruins last year. Now I think she can make a big-time impact with Michigan, especially since Michigan does have a good portion of its players returning, such as May Pertovsky. So we'll see what happens. Now this is the big transfer right here, and this was the transfer I kind of reported on in the early afternoon via the Set Point account. Maddie Skinner, an outside hitter who transfers from Kentucky to Texas. Now this is a huge get right here, because Maddie Skinner is the younger sister of Avery Skinner, and Maddie was a part of that Kentucky women's volleyball team that won the NCAA championship back in the spring of 2021. So with Skinner on board the Texas offense, and in terms of the Texas rotation, she could really make a big impact, just because Maddie Skinner is a 6 rotation player. And I'm surprised. She is not I think she's only a sophomore. Yeah, she's only a sophomore, and the fact that she transferred from Kentucky means that something is brewing in that Kentucky program, and it's not something good. So for Kentucky, that is a huge loss, but Kentucky's loss is Texas's gain. And this kind of makes you wonder, with Kentucky losing out on Maddie Skinner, is the SEC up for grabs? Can Mississippi State, can Florida, and can any other teams challenge Kentucky next year? That's the million-dollar question. Now, also, I'm not going to try to speculate why Skinner transferred, but it could have also been because Kentucky lost in the round of 32 to Illinois, which I'm pretty sure that makes Adam happy. But all in all, for Maddie Skinner, this is huge for her, considering Texas returns a majority of its players. They did lose Skylar Fields, but Maddie Skinner does make up for that a little bit more. So I think with Maddie Skinner transferring, it's going to be big time. It's going to be a big year for Texas. Like, Texas has to at least make the Final Four, if not the championship game. Like, Texas is no longer having any more excuses. Like, they made the championship back in the spring of 2021. They lost in the Elite Eight to a peaking Nebraska team who had been doing everything possible to win games instead of lose is just phenomenal. Like, Texas has to win, has to at least make their championship run be known next year. So we'll see what happens. Going back to NC State, they picked up Martina Leoniak, who is an outside hitter who was previously from Hawaii. So this is another big get for NC State just because it's another player in NC State's arsenal. And I'm pretty sure NC State's recruiting class is going to be something to note. I haven't even touched upon NC State's recruiting class, and they're getting all these transfers coming in. And this is going to be huge for NC State. This is probably going to be a big season for the Wolfpack. We'll have to see if they can make a big splash, if they can take down some of the powers such as Pitt or Louisville or Georgia Tech or the rising upcomer Miami. So we'll have to see. And then the most recent transfer happened today. We have Gabby Blossom, a setter who transferred from Penn State as she transfers to San Diego. So I basically spoke about this on the Set Point account. Gabby Blossom goes to a San Diego roster who features Grace Froling, the West Coast Conference Freshman of the Year back in Froling's freshman year. Blossom is a phenomenal setter, and I think that definitely adds depth to San Diego's offense. And it really, and heck, she could probably play in a 6-2 offense, aka two-setter offense. So I think this is big-time news for the Toreros. Now, the big question is, will Katie Lukes use her 5th year of eligibility? That still is the million-dollar question. But honestly, if she does, then she also joins Froling and Layla Blackwell as some of the top kill leaders for San Diego from last year. And then lastly, in terms of college volleyball transfers, we have Riley Fay, who transfers from Missouri State to New Mexico State, as she is a setter. Once again, a setter transfer is always good to have. It's kind of like having a second quarterback, just in case one of your setters gets injured or is sick or something along those lines. So yeah, it's a good thing to have. As Adam asks, a two-setter offense, how common is that? It actually is rather common. I have seen teams run 6-2 offenses. I think Louisville ran that. Our Mississippi State ran that. I feel other teams run it. So it's somewhat common, to answer your question, Adam. So all in all, a two-setter offense is pretty common. I wouldn't call it overly common, but it's still like not surprising. So there is that right there for all the transfers. All in all, this was a big week of transfers from all the way from the last time I went on over to today. So that is some awesome stuff right there. So that's all the transfers. Now let's jump into some coaching news. So we had 2 Big Ten women's volleyball teams hire some coaches. So we'll start with this first one. Let's start with Illinois, as Illinois, a.k.a. Adam's neck of the woods, recently hired Krysta Vansant, who was a former University of Washington standout. So Vansant was named the newest women's volleyball assistant coach. This was released today as the women's coach, Chris Thomas, named Krysta Vansant the next assistant coach for the Fighting Illini. And according to Thomas, he says that Krysta was very impressive in every phase of her interview process with our staff. She has had a stellar career as a player, but more importantly, she conveys how those experiences have made her a better person, coach, and mentor to those around her, and how she continually wants to improve in that regard. We are training champions on and off the court, and Krysta will play a huge role in our players' development. We are thrilled to add her to our Illini family today. And she actually had herself a good assistant coach career back at Indiana, one of the conference rivals of Illinois, as she was on the Hoosier staff all the way back from January of 2018. So there's that in that regard. And believe it or not, Vansant actually helped recruit the 2020 Indiana freshman class, which actually ranked number 15 in the country, which was the highest rank of any Indiana program in program history. So if all goes well for Illinois, they could be back in that NCAA tournament, and more importantly, they could possibly be having a deeper run, because the fact that they knocked off the number 7 seed in the round of 32, I don't think anybody saw that coming, but the fact that they did that is straight up phenomenal. It's special. I think Illinois has something going here, and Vansant was actually selected as an assistant coach for Team USA's women's volleyball collegiate national team on the Japan tour of the summer of 2019, and she was also selected for the U.S. women's junior national team coaching staff in the summer of 2020. And she did graduate from the University of Washington, and she helped win gold at the Pan Am American Games, and she was also an alternate player for the 2016 Rio Olympic team. So I think having Vansant with that much experience is going to help Illinois tenfold. So I think Illini fans really have to be excited for this. So, Adam, if you're still listening, I think this hire was kind of a home run hire in terms of an assistant coach. Like, Tomas is a phenomenal coach, but with Vansant, it just boosts their knowledge and their coaching smarts tenfold. So there's that. Jumping over to Penn State, we have Penn State's women's volleyball team naming their third coach in their program's history, as they named Katie Schumacher-Cawley their new women's volleyball head coach, as she takes over for the longtime Russ Rose, who just recently stepped down. So this was released today in a press release, and the news was actually first broken, and I saw this news via Emily Eamon of Big Ten Volley Talk. So the press release was released at 10 a.m. as Penn State Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics Sandy Barbour announced that she hired Katie Schumacher-Cawley as the third head coach in the 46-year history of Penn State women's volleyball. Yes, that's only the third head coach in Penn State women's volleyball history. I can't believe it. It just goes to show you that Russ Rose was a pioneer for the Lady Lions. And according to Barbour, she says, after an extensive national search, we are thrilled to have Katie Schumacher-Cawley named as the third head coach in Penn State women's volleyball history. Katie has a deep connection with the Penn State program as both an All-American and a national champion, student athlete, and head coach. Katie's time as a head coach was filled with success on the court, in the classroom, and in our community. As an assistant with the Nittany Lions the last 4 seasons, she has demonstrated her commitment to preparing our students for success in aspects of their lives. And she goes on to saying other things, and she says the future is bright for Penn State women's volleyball, and that's awesome stuff. So, Katie Schumacher's ties to the Penn State women's volleyball program runs deep, dating back to her 2-time All-American student-athlete days, and she spent 4 years as an assistant coach for Penn State women's volleyball. She returned to Happy Valley as the top assistant for Penn State, and she was the recruiting coordinator in 2018. And she is a Penn State alum, so honestly, I think this is kind of a good hire. The big concern for Penn State is that they lost so many players to transfers, and honestly, I don't know how Penn State is going to rebound from that. I think Penn State will still be good, but I don't think they'll be the dominant team like they have been in the past. Like, you look at the Big Ten as a whole. You look at them as one of the more premier conferences in women's volleyball. Can Penn State really stack up to teams like Wisconsin, the reigning champion, Nebraska, a team that has loads of talent and probably a darn good recruiting class coming in, Minnesota, Purdue, an on-the-rise Michigan team? Like, can they stack up to those teams? And this is just the conference. Can they stack up to other teams like Pitt, their in-state rival? Can they stack up to, like, Washington or any other team that wants to play them? Because they played Georgia Tech in that first game of the season, and I know it was the first game of the season, but Georgia Tech kind of punched him in the mouth. Not literally, but they let him know that they're not the big bully on the campus, that there are other teams that are excited to go at Penn State. And whenever any team plays Penn State, whether it's like Stanford, Oregon, the list goes on, every team is going to be fired up to play Penn State, whether Russ Rose is at the helm or not. But just because Penn State had that culture of winning championships. And then Stanford kind of took over as kind of the, not really the bully, but as the top dog, as they wound up winning 3 national championships this past decade. And honestly, that basically resonates through the Stanford women's volleyball program, and basically they're kind of the top dog on the West Coast. But now Penn State's kind of going to be in this rebuilding stage where they're kind of going to have to start from scratch, use their big recruiting class, and hope they get some transfers that come through the transfer portal. Like, it's still up in the air in regards to if Penn State can be, like that top dog team. So we'll see what happens. But I think this is a good hire. I think Penn State hiring an alum for their women's volleyball program was kind of expected. They didn't want to have to go too far, but I think she's probably the candidate that fits the most. And with her being the top assistant, it makes super sense. And everyone kind of knew that Russ Rose was not going to coach forever. Like, if Russ Rose coached forever, then he is drinking the same fountain of youth that Nick Saban and Bill Belichick are drinking. But I digress. So there is that right there for Penn State women's volleyball and all the women's volleyball news. Now let's jump on over to the men's volleyball, because I'm pretty sure everyone is chomping at the bit here. They are probably wondering, oh my God, where's the men's volleyball news? Tell us, Teran. All right, so last week's men's volleyball matches did not disappoint. We had 3 upsets last week. We're going to go in chronological order here, so we'll save the best upset for last, maybe. But we start off with USC knocking off UC Santa Barbara in the UC Santa Barbara Gaucho Invitational. Thanks, Adam, for tuning in. I appreciate you. He says he's got to go. He's got probably family duties, but I appreciate you tuning in. Definitely do check out Chi-Town Weekly, which comes on an hour before set point. Adam does an amazing job talking all things Chicago sports. Talked about mostly the Bears and the NFL today. He also threw in a little Blackhawks action. So thank you for tuning in, Adam. I appreciate you. Now let's jump on over to the men's volleyball side of things. So the first upset was USC versus UC Santa Barbara. So the first matchup, this was the first of 2 matchups. Keep in mind that USC and UC Santa Barbara, along with UC San Diego, were the only teams to play in the UC Santa Barbara Gaucho Invitational, just because UCLA unfortunately opted out due to COVID protocols in their program, and then Cal State Northridge and Concordia of Irvine opted out just because of safety purposes of the Omicron variant. So that left UC San Diego, USC, and UC Santa Barbara remaining as the teams. So USC, a lot of people probably did not have a whole lot of expectations for the Trojans. They came to play in that first set. There were 10 ties and 4 lead changes, and unfortunately for them, the Gauchos came out on top in that first set 25-19. The second set looked like it was kind of going to go the Gauchos' way, as they led throughout most of the set, and USC didn't take their first lead until 22-21, and they trailed by as many as 6. That just went to show how good the Gauchos were. They were the number 11 team in the top 15 going into that match, while USC wasn't even close to being ranked. So USC managed to have some late comeback magic as they took the second set 25-22. Once again, they trailed by as many as 6, and their first lead didn't come until 22-21. It was quite amazing for the Trojans to pull off that little comeback in that second set. Then the third set, the Gauchos flexed their muscle again. They won that third set 25-17. And then in the fourth set, USC stopped trailing UC Santa Barbara after it was 10-9 in favor of the Gauchos, as USC just took the lead and never looked back, as the Gauchos basically just had no answer for USC. USC took the fourth set, 25-23. The set was a little closer than it needed to be, just because the Gauchos are good, but USC was able to have that edge. I also should note in that second set that the Gauchos got outscored by USC 8-1 after leading 21-17. That is a big ouch if you're UC Santa Barbara. And then the fifth set, USC had all the momentum. They never trailed, as USC won that fifth set 15-8, and they won the first match of the UC Santa Barbara Gaucho Invitational. USC was led by Sam Coburn, who had 18 kills. He is a big-time get for USC as he transferred from UCLA. I think that is huge news for the Trojans, and he did really good in his Trojan debut. Simon Gallas added 17 kills, while Liam Schroeder and Brandon Browning added 10 kills. Browning also added 10 digs as well, as Browning hit 500 for the match, and Schroeder hit 833. He had 10 kills on 12 swings, which was very impressive. And then Coburn also added 4 service aces. Sam Coburn has a very deadly jump serve, top spin serve, and this guy can serve you off the floor if you are not careful. Gallas also added 2 service aces of his own, as USC as a whole hit 328. Now, UC Santa Barbara had only 2 players in double digits in terms of kills, as Shiha Hayoshin led the way for UC Santa Barbara with 21 kills. He also hit 349, which was also very impressive. Ryan Wilcox was the other player in double digits in terms of kills for the Gauchos, as he had 18 kills. He hit 342. But the next kill leader after Wilcox was Brandon Hicks, their middle blocker, as he had 6 kills. He hit 625, but he only had 8 swings. And then the kill leader after that was Sam Collins, who had 4 kills, and then Rice Tracy added 3 kills. There weren't too many eye-popping stats from UC Santa Barbara, as they hit 333 on the night, which was also very impressive. Like the fact that the Gauchos hit 333 but lost kind of speaks to high volumes of how USC was an underdog, but they didn't let that deter them. The fifth set was kind of UC Santa Barbara's bad set in terms of hitting, as they only hit 158 in that set. They only had 6 kills out of their 8 points, and then they had 3 hitting errors, which did not help the Gauchos that much. So tough start to the season for UC Santa Barbara, but a good win for USC. They not only won once, they won twice, as they defeated the Gauchos the second go-around. As the first set kind of resembled the first set of the first match, as UC Santa Barbara took the first set 25-20, but then the second and third set were very one-sided, as USC never trailed or never tied in that second set. And then the third set, USC hardly trailed in that set, as they won it 25-18. They won the second set 25-17. Then the fourth set, it looked as if USC was going to have to go 5 with Santa Barbara, but then they took the lead at 17-16. They finally broke through the Gauchos' grasp, as USC won that second set 25-22. Santa Barbara tried to make a late run out of it, but they just could not do so, as USC was led by Simon Gallas, who had 16 kills. He hit 294. Coburn had 15 kills. He hit 364 on the night. As a team, USC hit 343, and also Brandon Browning added 11 digs. He had 5 kills to boot as well. Not too many eye-popping stats from USC, other than the fact that they outdug UC Santa Barbara 43-33, which is quite impressive. As for UC Santa Barbara, they were led by Shah Hyoshin, as he had 13 kills. I'm going to actually pronounce that correctly. Shia Hayoshin added 13 kills. He did hit 194, which kind of weighed him down. Like, hitting was kind of a bit of an issue for the Gauchos, as Ryan Wilcox had 10 hitting errors of his own, but he also had 12 kills, but he hit 53 on the night. Their most efficient hitter was Brandon Hicks, who had 9 kills, 2 hitting errors. He hit 438, which was very impressive. UC Santa Barbara did not have one player reach double digits in terms of digs for their team, as the Gauchos fell to 0-2 to start the season. They were supposed to play UC San Diego in a non-conference game, but that game eventually got canceled, which was unfortunate for them. And unfortunately, UC Santa Barbara will have to search for its next win in a little bit. So now we jump on over to probably the biggest upset of the season. Stanford defeating number 12 UC Irvine. Now, Stanford did take on Lindenwood earlier in the week, and they won both of those matchups. Now, the first set against UC Irvine, Stanford actually trailed UC Irvine by as many as 6. They trailed 18-12, and they eventually were trailing 19-14. Everyone was thinking UC Irvine's got this. UC Irvine is going to flex their muscle on Stanford. But then Stanford, out of nowhere, despite them trailing 22-19, Stanford went on a 6-1 run to take the first set 25-23. That is great grit right there from the Cardinal. Keep in mind, this was a program that was going to get disbanded by the Stanford organization, but everyone petitioned to keep the Stanford men's volleyball program. It is here to stay, and that was the best decision anyone could have ever made. So absolutely great decision. Stanford took that first set 25-23. The second set, Stanford took it 25-21, and everyone in Maples Pavilion was probably rocking, and they were thinking, it's going to happen. Stanford is going to pull off the big win over UC Irvine. Well, UC Irvine wasn't going to go down without a fight. Set 3, UC Irvine never trailed, but they were up 22-16, and it looked like this was going to be a one-sided affair in this set. But Stanford, being the resilient team that they are, they managed to claw their way back. They managed to force the set into a deuce set, but then UC Irvine pulled away and won that third set 27-25. It could have gone either way between the Cardinal and the Anteaters. And then set 4, UC Irvine took the lead for good at 12-11, and they never trailed pretty much after that. There were 8 ties and 5 lead changes, but that was in the early stages of set 4. Then in the fifth set, neither team led by as many as 2, as early on it was UC Irvine leading, then Stanford leading, and Stanford needed 4 match points to put the game away, but they eventually did so, winning that fifth set 20-18. Tough break for UC Irvine. They blew 2 match points as Stanford avoided the reverse sweep, and they were able to pick up their 3rd straight win of the season, and they upset UC Irvine, which was very impressive. I honestly did not think, and I'm not trying to say this in a negative way, I didn't think Stanford was going to beat a Big West Conference team, just because it looks like the Big West Conference is the premier conference, just because it has a majority of the talented teams in the nation. So honestly, hats off to Stanford for defending their home court. And I guess they played at the Burnham Pavilion, not the Maples Pavilion, which I guess it's still the Stanford home floor, as Stanford was led by Will Rotman, who had 16 kills. Rotman was a phenomenal player back in his high school days, and he had huge aspirations to go to Stanford, and he wants to do everything in his power to try to keep the Stanford men's program alive. And now he is getting his chance to do his thing when it comes to playing for Stanford men's volleyball. Luke Turner also chipped in 12 kills, while Nathaniel Gates, who is the brother of Madeline Gates, had 11 kills. He hit 786. He had 14 swings on the night, so that was huge for Nate Gates, or Nathaniel Gates. I just call him Nate just because it's short. Justin Louis had 13 digs, while Stanford had 6 service aces. They had 11.5 blocks, and while they were outdug 43-38, Stanford out-hit UC Irvine by a minuscule margin of 237 to 234, which is darn right impressive, though. As for UC Irvine, they were led by Francisco Sani, who had 24 kills. He hit 333, but he did have 10 hitting errors. But he was kind of their effective kill leader, as, remember, this is a UC Irvine team that graduated quite a bit of stars, such as Joel Schneidmiller and Scott Stadick. So it's going to take UC Irvine a little time to get its footing. And they only played one match prior to facing Stanford, as they played Lindenwood. So that's how UC Irvine wasn't really able to find its footing in that match against Stanford. Hilaire Heno added 22 kills, and he hit 255. He also chipped in a match-high 19 digs. Very impressive stuff, as Patrick Vorenkamp chipped in 9 digs to go along with his 52 assists, while Cole Power added 8 digs. Cole Power is a transfer from UCLA. It's a good little transfer, as he comes from a talented school such as the Bruins, and he looks to try to help out the Anteaters try to reach for greater heights, which is some good stuff right there. So, like I said, UC Irvine did get out-hit by 3 points, and they didn't really have that big type of set. Like, the defense did a good job in the fourth and third set against Stanford, as they held Stanford to only 97 in terms of hitting percentage and 103 in that fourth set. And then, unfortunately, UC Irvine just could not break through, and they just could not finish off Stanford. Like, I understand Stanford was the underdog, and they didn't have much to lose, but I'm a little surprised to see UC Irvine kind of falling in I wouldn't say a big test, but in a big road test, because you got to win on the road if you want to have success. Like, they play in a conference that has raucous fans such as Long Beach State, UC Santa Barbara, and even Hawaii. Hawaii is probably the most raucous. So for UC Irvine, this is kind of just an early test. This is kind of just an early live and learn moment. So there is that right there. And then in terms of other matches that happened that I previewed earlier last week, we had GCU beating McKendree in both matches. So, sorry about that. So, GCU beat McKendree in the first match 3-1, 21-25, 30-28, 25-19, and 31-29. As it was a dramatic first match for the Lopes, but they were able to pull out the win on their home floor. They won the second match 25-19, 25-22, 22-25, and 25-14, as GCU starts the season off 2-0, and they were the number 9 team at the time. So good stuff right there. Unfortunately, like I said, UC San Diego and UC Santa Barbara canceled their non-conference game. I want to say it had something to do with COVID protocols within one of those programs, but I'm not going to assume that, so there's that right there. That game just got canceled altogether. Then, number 1, Hawaii defeated Loyola of Chicago twice. The first matchup, Hawaii defeated Loyola 25-14, 25-23, 25-18. Then the second match, Hawaii beat Loyola in 4 sets. Loyola actually took a set off Hawaii. Hawaii won 25-19, 25-16, 18-25, and 25-14. I was a little surprised to see Loyola winning that third set by that big of a margin. So kudos to the Ramblers. Like, Loyola does have a good team. They have a really good team. They have a lot of returners. It's just that playing on the road and not being able to beat a Loyola team for the first time since the 2000s is very challenging. And you're facing the reigning NCAA champion. So you have to you have to basically add that to the mix. And then keep in mind the first match was Hawaii's banner unveiling night. So I think Loyola kind of got a case of the pregame jitters and whatnot. So it's a live and learn moment for Loyola. I think they'll be able to rebound from these losses. So we'll see. And then the last noteworthy match from last week in terms of men's volleyball, we had Penn State, number 5 Penn State, defeating BYU both times, both coming in sweeping fashion. The first match, Penn State swept 25-14, 25-18, and 25-19. And then the second match, Penn State swept BYU 25-21, 25-19, and 26-24. BYU is definitely going to be a team in progress as once again, they lost half their team to graduation. Penn State, on the other hand, returned majority of their stars, and I'm really high on Penn State in men's volleyball. I think the Nittany Lions can really be something special. It all depends on if they can stack up to those other talented teams on their schedule, but I really look forward to what Penn State can offer. I really think the Nittany Lions can do some damage. Like, Cal Fisher is a stud, and he's only one of many returners for the Nittany Lions. So we'll have to see what they bring to the table. So before we head to the commercial break, we have to get into the top 15 men's volleyball teams for this week. The AVCA Division 1 and 2 men's coaches volleyball poll came out today before 2 p.m. Pacific time. So 15 through 11 consists of UC Irvine at 15, McKendree at 14, Stanford and USC tied for number 12, and Ohio State at 11. 10 through 6 consists of UC San Diego at 10, Lewis at 9, Loyola of Chicago at 8, BYU at 7, and Grand Canyon University at 6. 5 through 1 consists of Long Beach State at 5, Penn State at 4, Pepperdine at 3, UCLA at 2, and your still number 1 team in the NCAA AVCA Division 1 and 2 men's volleyball coaches poll is Hawaii, which is no surprise. Something to note about Grand Canyon's number 6 ranking, and this is a fun fact about Grand Canyon's number 6 ranking, that's actually the highest in program history for the Lobes. And that's quite special for GCU. They do have a promising team, but they do have a big test coming up this weekend. Who will they be playing, and where will it be held? You'll have to find out after the commercial break of Set Point. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after a word from these commercials.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Harrison Glazer, and we're coming at you from the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. I cover the Jets, the Islanders, the Nets, and the Yankees.
This is Pierre Moss, and I cover the Mets, Knicks, Rangers, and the Giants.
Our show is live every Wednesday through Spreaker and a bunch of other ways to get our content. Again, we're the Show That Never Sleeps podcast. We talk about all those New York sports. It's a lot of fun. We get into all of it. Please tune in. Again, that's Wednesdays at 6 p.m.
And we look forward to having you guys right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, sports fans? Are you looking for the latest on Northern California sports? Then take a trip out west with me, your host, Gina G, on Reppin' the NorCal Sports, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'll be bringing it to you all the way live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's always a packed show. I'll bring you everything dynastic 49ers, the bite of the San Jose Sharks, torture of the San Francisco Giants, the Golden State Warriors that we still believe. Then take you across the bay to the rise and grind of the Oakland A's. I've got you covered on college ball from the Cal Bears to the Stanford Cardinal, so that no matter what, reppin' in NorCal sports is always reppin' the Bay. So if you bleed red and gold, or you're looking to keep an eye out west in them thar hills, don't miss me, Gina G, on reppin' in NorCal sports. Catch me every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, and I'll have your fandom repped harder than a trio of defenders guarding Stephen Curry before his buzzer beater is Gucci.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That give you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I A in the FBS? Well then look no further. Join myself, Larry B., and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Rose Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And welcome back to Set Point, the second segment of the show. I appreciate you all tuning in. Gina G says she is still tuning in. She's just multitasking. I appreciate you, Gina. I appreciate all of your support for Set Point and SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Definitely do check out Gina G and repping to NorCal Sports. Her drop just played just recently, and she does an outstanding job breaking down all things Northern California sports, whether it's Stanford, Cal, Fresno State, you name it. And she's obviously going to be breaking down all things NorCal sports, including the San Francisco 49ers making the playoffs this year. Also want to give a shout out to Gina for her getting inducted into the iSports Radio Hall of Fame. She, as well as 3 others, have been inducted, and she definitely deserves it. And honestly, she's a diehard Northern California / 49ers / Stanford / Cal / you name it fan. So good job on your induction into the Hall of Fame. Now let's jump on into the second half of the show. We're not going to go too long just because, well, we obviously have the matches to preview for this week, the top NCAA men's volleyball matches to preview this week, but there are not too many. There's not too many ranked-on-ranked matches, so there are a couple noteworthy matches, as we have some sneaky good matchups out there as well. We have NJIT hitting the road to Illinois to take on Lewis on Friday, and they'll be taking on Loyola on Saturday. So NJIT is kind of an underrated program. They're kind of the second best team in its conference, but they will be kicking off their season. Lewis was supposed to open up their season last weekend, but unfortunately it got canceled. So Lewis is basically opening up their season this week, as Lewis is also going to be opening up the season. I want to say it's opening up at home against some sort of team, as they open up the season this Saturday. They open up the season tomorrow against Maryville, which that must be a new program. So either a new program or something that's a team that's not NCAA Division 1 and 2. So, but for me, the matchup I'm keeping an eye on for Lewis / Loyola is their matchups against NJIT, just because I think NJIT is very underrated, aka New Jersey Institute of Technology, but it's NJIT. I think NJIT has some promise, but they're really going to need to come to play. Obviously, Lewis is going to be itching to get back on that court, especially since they'll have a match under their belts. And then against Loyola, that's a stacked Loyola team. NJIT really has to limit the errors. They really have to slow down Cole Schlafhauer. This is a very tough Loyola team. This could probably be one of their better teams since 2014 and 2015. So we'll have to see what happens with the Ramblers versus the Highlanders. And then Lewis is always a good team perennially. Like, NJIT really is going to have its work cut out for them, but I think these matchups are what NJIT needs. I think NJIT needs some tough matchups to start off, just because they need those tough matches in order to take down the Penn State monster that is in their conference. So we'll have to see. And then also something to note is that NJIT will be playing at Long Beach State, so it'll basically be my alma mater versus Pierre Moss's neck of the woods. So there's that right there. So that's only the sneaky good matchups. I have 2 noteworthy matches for this week. So this week, the first noteworthy matchup I have is tied for number 12 Stanford at UC Irvine on Friday. So this is round 2 between the Cardinal and Stanford. As Stanford, like I mentioned earlier, they won the first matchup in 5 sets. As Stanford has now really appeared on everyone's radar. I think this is starting to become this is a promising start for Stanford, and if they can get a few wins under their belt, they could definitely get everyone's attention, especially in the MPSF. Like, the MPSF is going to be very brutal for them. I'm not saying they can't win it, but they face GCU in that conference, and they also face UCLA, which is also going to be a toughie. And then BYU is still good as ever despite losing half their roster to graduation. So in addition to Stanford's big matchup against UC Irvine, or their little grudge match against UC Irvine, they're also hitting the road on Saturday to take on UC San Diego. Now, UC San Diego did not get to play this weekend as, unfortunately, their matchup against the Gauchos in their non-conference game unfortunately got canceled most likely because of COVID protocols, and also their matchup against Concordia. They were actually originally supposed to play Concordia, but unfortunately that didn't get to pan out just because obviously Concordia pulled out, and they're going to need to they unfortunately could not get any matchups last week, which really stinks, as it really sucks for them to have a slow start. And according to their little press release, it says, due to health and safety protocols, the UC San Diego men's volleyball team has had its 2000 season opener delayed until January 14th, aka this Friday, which UC San Diego will not be playing Stanford. They'll be playing Stanford on Saturday. They'll be playing Harvard on Friday. So Saturday is basically going to be where UC San Diego takes on the Cardinal. And if Stanford does knock off UC San Diego and UC Irvine, they deserve to move into that top 10. Let's get that out of the way. So for Stanford, they will no longer have the luxury of playing at home. They're going to be out of their comfort zone. They're going to be playing in Southern California both days, as they're traveling to the Brent Event Center, and then they're also traveling to the Rimac Arena to take on UC San Diego. Those are going to be some tough matchups, and Stanford will be forced out of its comfort zone. But I will say this about the Cardinal. If they can get both of those wins, this could prove how for real they are, and this could also prove another thing, that the Big West Conference is probably going to be a 2-horse race between Long Beach State and Hawaii. Just because UC Irvine lost a lot of players to graduation, and then UC San Diego is going to get its season started this week, as they'll be playing Harvard in their first matchup, and then it's going to be the second of a back-to-back. And I don't know if UC San Diego will be prepared for that. Now, obviously, Stanford has played UC Irvine, and they won that matchup, and then they played Lindenwood and won both those matchups. So for Stanford, this is kind of going to be their first true test of the season. And the season's only going to get tougher from here on out for the Cardinal, just because the Cardinal, like I said, they have that brutal MPSF schedule. And then they're also facing some other tough opponents as well, as their next true challenge is going to be in Austin, Texas, when they take on Hawaii, and that's going to be super tough, really going to be tough, as they play the number 1 team, and then they also play some other challenging opponents such as Long Beach State, on the road, mind you, and then after they play Long Beach State, they're basically going to get the gist of their conference schedule, as they have Concordia the first week, and then the following week they have UCLA at home, and then they get a bye week, as I guess they're playing their Bay Area All-Stars. I don't know what that is, but that's probably an unofficial matchup or an alumni matchup. But either way, after their bye week on March 19th, or the week of March 19th, Stanford will play USC at home, and then the following week, Stanford will play at Grand Canyon, and then the following week, Stanford plays BYU at Maples Pavilion, and then Stanford closes the week at Pepperdine, and that's basically going to be where all the chips fall. It all depends on how every team looks. Like, every team is just going to get every team for the most part is probably going to get its season started, and every team is basically going to be in their dress rehearsal stage. Stanford, on the other hand, is kind of a little past the dress rehearsal stage, as I think they're kind of in the practice / take one stage, and they already aced the first tryout. And I think, to me, Stanford has the potential to win both matchups, and if they do, they're going to put everyone on notice that they can win on the road, and they can win against any opponent, no matter who it is. So, but that's just the gist of their schedule. Their schedule, like I said, it gets really tough, but I feel Stanford can win at least one match, if not two. I think they're going to at least win one. If they don't win one, then they'll win the other, or vice versa. So that is that for the Stanford versus UC Irvine / UC San Diego matchup. I guess I should make note that UC San Diego, currently the number 10 team in the nation, will be kicking off its season, and we'll see if the Tritons are going to have a little bit of rust or if they'll have a lot of readiness. So the matchup of the week, and I really hate to pick this team again, is Penn State, as Penn State is the number 4 team in the nation. They will be hosting GCU on Thursday and on Saturday. So GCU, like I said, is in their highest rank of its program's history. They're number 6 in the nation, while Penn State is number 4. They're this very talented team, very special program that could possibly make a NCAA championship run. I really am looking forward to this matchup just because it's the first test for both the Lopes and the Nittany Lions. For Penn State, they have a plethora of players that really can do some damage, while GCU has both Gianni brothers. They're led by Camden Gianni. I think the Lopes are not going to make this easy on Penn State. Obviously, Penn State had their way against BYU, but again, BYU is kind of in that early stage of experiments and what lineup is going to be good going into X week and Y week. So I think that matchup doesn't do Penn State any justice. And Penn State should enjoy playing at the Rec Hall for the time being, just because they will be embarking on a road trip pretty soon, as after they play GCU, they'll be hitting the road to Southern California to take on USC and UCLA in the Big Ten Pac-12 Challenge. We don't know if UCLA is going to be kicking off its season sooner rather than later. They do kick off the season this Saturday against Princeton, but that's only going to be one match, and heaven knows if Princeton could put the Bruins on notice, considering, again, that's UCLA's first match of the season. They haven't played any matches just because they had the COVID protocols. And then, obviously, they're going to be playing a tough Ohio State team, and they're going to be playing a very tough Penn State team next week. But back to Penn State, the schedule is going to start to really pick up. After that week of playing USC and UCLA, Penn State will be staying in California to take on UC Santa Barbara at UC Santa Barbara, and then they'll play Long Beach State at Long Beach State. The Long Beach State match I'm hoping to attend, by the way. And it's and their little event is going to be called Battle of the Bigs, a.k.a. the Big West versus the Big Ten. And then Penn State obviously kicks off conference play against Princeton. Then they've got George Mason, Harvard, Sacred Heart, St. Francis of Brooklyn, NJIT, Charleston, and then they take a break from the first half of conference play to play their true rival, Ohio State, and then they return to EIVA conference play, and then they've got their tournament. So early on, Penn State is going to be challenged very early and often, and there's not going to be one unranked team on their schedule. Like, if barring USC does not lose to Penn State, barring USC does not lose to Princeton, USC could still be ranked going into the matchup against Penn State, and that could be rather interesting for both the Trojans and for the Nittany Lions, just because Penn State is really showing their chops, and USC is they're kind of showing some early chops, as USC, I guess I should make note of this, USC plays Princeton on Wednesday, and then they play in Erskine on Friday. Then they've got the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge, so there's that right there. But back to Penn State versus GCU. This is going to be a barn burner. I do not think we will see one sweep. I think both matches at least go 4 sets. If it goes 5 sets, then that's going to be the battle of both teams just really looking very promising. And I think GCU has some potential to make some noise in the MPSF. Now, they obviously have to deal with UCLA. They have to deal with Pepperdine, which kicks off their season this week. And then they also have to deal with BYU. But they do have the best player in the conference in Camden Gianni. It all depends on if GCU can get other players involved and if they can help give Camden Gianni the support that he needs. Because obviously you can't win with one player. It just doesn't work that way. So if Camden Gianni can do his thing, if GCU can get him the support, then honestly, I think GCU could be a team to watch for in MPSF play and in terms of the NCAA. But for me, I think it's tough to really pick a winner of this, and I don't like picking, making predictions for, ranked versus ranked teams. So I think I'm just going to say that this is going to be a barn burner of a matchup just because both these teams are off to promising starts and both these teams have potential. I guess to close out some of the matches to watch for, Pepperdine kicks off its season on Thursday and on Friday against Erskine, and the first matchup is actually going to be an 11 a.m. Pacific time matchup, and that's going to be on Thursday. And then the second matchup against Erskine is going to be a 7 p.m. Pacific time matchup. So there's that right there for Pepperdine, the number 3 team in the nation. And that is going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time to drop that beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. I know the NCAA college football championship was going on, but for those that were listening on the playback, I appreciate you. For those listening live, I appreciate you. For those listening at work, I appreciate you. For those listening at all, any place, at any time, I appreciate you. Big shout to the chat room, Gina G, Adam Karnick, and Davidson Crooks for popping in, saying hello, listening in. I appreciate it. Thank you, Gina. She says, great show as usual. I appreciate you. I can't wait to hear Reppin' to NorCal Sports tomorrow. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourselves a great rest of the week. Enjoy the volleyball action that's going on. It's definitely going to be a week to remember, especially with that Penn State GCU matchup. And I shall see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Have a great night, everybody. Peace!